Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Heroic Efforts. Thank you for joining us all once again on an incredible, smashing, exciting, rampaging new episode. We are very happy that you are all joining us once again. I am, of course, Andy Foreman. I'm sitting here with Mr. Martin Fisher.
Notice he did say astonishing, which is like the worst Hulk run ever. So how y'all doing, everybody?
I could have said totally awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm also sitting here with Mr. Nick Talamante.
What's going on, everybody? We're bringing back a little bit, doing one movie an episode, and also shitty audio quality, so apologies in advance. Hope we sound okay, but welcome back.
Andy was correct. It was totally awesome Hulk. I don't know where astonishing Hulk came from in my head. Whatever. Fucking comic books always do this shit.
Anyway, here we are. We're back with a supersized episode. Thank you all for joining us. You already know what we're talking about because you clicked on the episode. Today, I couldn't think of a better movie to dedicate a whole episode to than Ang Lee's 2003 masterpiece, Hulk.
When you're pushed too far,
You pathetic freak.
don't just get even,
You're making me angry.
get mad.
I don't think you're gonna like me when I'm angry.
And unleash the hero within.
No adjective needed.
Nope.
Just the Hulk.
Just the Hulk. The big green man himself in his tight little purple pants with Danny Elfman scoring, fucking Ang Lee directing, fucking brilliant
Nick
movie.
Nolte chewing
Nick Nolte
on that scenery.
just chewing.
I can tell you folks from personal experience, Andy has been itching to talk about this movie since we started the show, and I
Yes.
can also say this is probably one of, next to maybe like Daredevil and the first Ghost Rider film, it's probably one of the primordial or primary foundational, if you will, films that help convince me to, see the vision, to see what Marty and Andy were talking about with, no, give these movies a second chance, and kind of the whole impetus of us doing this show. Because after watching this specifically with Andy at his house, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, it fucking straight up just the Danny DeVito meme. Like, I was like, I get it now, because this movie, like, some slight minor gripes aside, this film fucking bangs.
Yes, and that's a little bit of context for this. Is the reason I showed this to Nick is because we got back from the picket line back during the WGA strikes back in 2023, and it would have been a long time of Nick sitting in traffic if he had left my house at that time. So he's like, oh, why don't we just hang out and watch a movie or whatever? I'm like, yeah, sure. And as I do with most people, I'm like, you want to watch Hulk 2003? And he's like, sure.
God bless him.
And the rest is history. I'm like, see? As I stare at him the entire time, the entire runtime, I'm not even watching the movie. I'm just watching his reaction to it. Yeah.
I just can imagine you deadpan staring at Nick's face as he's watching the TV, and you just hear, "In humanity's soul," and you're just watching, smiling. You like that?
Yeah, the whole time I'm watching it, and I'm like pretty enthralled by the film, just really appreciating it on a second run back. And then Andy the whole time is actually, for some reason, outside his window, just face pressed against the glass, just like a sicko, just laughing like, yes.
Yeah. That should be the thumbnail for this episode. It's just that. But since we've contextualized how we've all seen it, we should probably contextualize what it was like when the movie was made. So this comes out 2003, the same year as Daredevil and X2, which, just a side note, talk about a fucking great year to be a Marvel fan. Oh my
What a run.
God. Trio of bangers. The Holy Trinity, if you will. But the most important thing to acknowledge is that this came out less than a year after Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man, which blew the doors off of not just superhero films, but the new millennium of blockbusters. And Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is not quite the same movie that Ang Lee's Hulk is. They're going for two kind of different things.
Yes.
And
Sam Raimi's Spider-Man set the stage for like reviving the comic book movie genre in a huge way and showed how big these movies can be. And unfortunately, an unfortunate side effect that came from that is that Fox went like, they looked at Daredevil and go like, we got to make this tighter and funner. And Universal saw Hulk and like, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do with this one.
Yep. I mean, they pimped the shit out of it with merchandise. That was
they
sure.
did.
What a great year. I remember the first time I ever went to Universal Studios was right before the movie came out, and I got a Hulk action figure, and I remember I got a Hulk popsicle, and I got to meet all the Marvel characters that were there in costume.
Yeah.
Yeah, only just now am I realizing that those were actors in Marvel costumes and not the characters themselves. But yeah, no, it was a great time. It was at that time where Marvel was really marketing these as blockbusters because, we're right. And the reason we're recording this is because we're on the cusp of Brave New World coming out. Yeah. And I haven't stopped seeing commercials for that. But they're not marketing it like the way, like, say, like Star Wars used to be marketed or whatever. Like, you're not going to the store and seeing, like, Captain America Pop-Tarts or there's not little cereal that's shaped like Captain America's shield.
There's no burger that you can freeze and slap together afterwards.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's no Hulk smash hands. The green Hulk smash hands.
Oh my god, Marvel, what are you doing? You could have made red Hulk smash hands that come with the cap shield for you and your brother or your fucking family member, your friend. Why aren't you doing this? Yeah. Where'd the marketing go? Yeah. I missed those days.
Bonus mustache included.
Slap a fucking mustache in Harrison Ford. Tell that old bastard to get in character or get out of line, man.
Yeah. Well, we're not here to talk about Brave New World. We're here to talk about the old world of comic book movies. And I have a great little anecdote that I've heard just on a couple of podcasts, so I haven't heard this firsthand, obviously. But apparently one of the producers from The Hulk, they were in the midst of production or maybe even post-production at the time, way too far in to change anything, basically. And they went and saw Spider-Man, and they said at the end when he like lands on the pole and swings at the camera right before it cuts to credits, everyone was like cheering and like going crazy. And he said he got out of the theater and he called up one of the other producers of The Hulk, and he just said, "We're fucked." Because basically, like, if this is what the public wants, Hulk does not deliver that at all. No. But the thing is Hulk is, especially with hindsight, probably one of the most dramatic, serious, and probably most sincere comic book movies ever made. Like, there's humor in it. But there's not a single wink at the audience at all. It's so good.
Which is really strange, considering how much like goofy shit goes on in the film, and I say that with full love, But I that's one of its many strengths that I appreciate, despite all the absolute nonsense that happens. It gives you a shit-eating grin, being like, "Can you believe this?"
It's the difference. It's the difference of people making fun of something sincere in a movie, and the movie making fun of itself. There is never a point in this movie where it goes like, "I'm punching a giant mutant dog. This is silly." Or, my dad's a big rock, man. This is silly. You had to leave it to the fucking audience to do that shit. I remember seeing this movie. I want to say I believe it came out in June 2003. So I was 7, I believe, and my dad took me, which is, what a great movie to watch with your father. What a perfect movie for that dynamic.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I remember 7 years old walking to is it an AMC that's on Universal City Walk or whatever? Yes. They used to have a giant Hulk bursting out of the top of the theater, like the theater.
They did. Yes, they did. Yeah. They did. Yes.
So they had that big fucking thing. I had my Hulk hands. I had the fucking Hulk PS2 video game with me.
Hell yeah, dude!
Hyped as hell for it. I was so fucking excited for the movie, and I watched it. And little 7-year-old me went, "That is not Spider-Man." But I went, "I don't know what it is about this movie, but I love this movie." Even at 7 years old, I'm like, I don't know what it is. This isn't Spider-Man. This isn't action-packed. But something about this is just resonating with my brain, and I don't know why at the time.
Well, I was 5, so I didn't see it in theaters. I was fortunate enough to see Spider-Man in theaters, but I did not see Hulk in theaters. But I remember sitting in the cart at Sam's Club with my parents when they bought the 2-disc special edition DVD, which is still on my shelf. I have it. I can see it right from where I'm sitting. And I watched it at home, and something in that movie just electrified my 5-year-old brain, and from then on, the Hulk was like one of my favorite characters of all time. To this day, one of my favorite characters. But I think what's important is we can kind of show the dissonance between they are marketing this as if Hulk is going to be the next Spider-Man.
Yes.
They are pushing, like, all the action figures, all the merchandise, all the way they're trying to get people in, but they're making it, oh yeah, buddy,
PS2
the
video game, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, where for some reason you have to play as Banner for 50% of it.
Worst part of the
boring
game.
as shit.
Yeah,
boring as shit. But we're not here to talk about the game. They made this sort of serious adult drama where it's like there's lots of good action in this, but I don't think we loved it. But from the outset, like, just if you had to like take a gamble, this isn't something you would look at and be like, oh yeah, kids are gonna love this.
No, yeah.
This isn't something that's like, oh, this is gonna be a family movie.
Yeah.
I mean, on the note of the marketing, you make a very interesting point, Andy, in that the way that they were going just full consume, just full on consumerism with the specific, like, just way it branded itself, like putting it out like all these fucking toys for kids, like you said, all of the tie-in products, all the kind of like meta media stuff that they had going on, where there was the video game, the cereal brands, the fucking TV shows, like all the kind of shit. The way that they were going full hog with this specific film and this character is very interesting because, as Andy's alluding to, this film is not really something that merits all that. And I don't mean that it's low quality or anything like that, but the way that they were pumping out all of those extra products to tie into the movie and promote it, you would think that this was like a Spider-Man or even more popcorny, like kind of like more mainstream Marvel movies we get now. Like that makes sense for them to pimp out like IP and the brand, because that's all that these films are centered around, is just this IP or the brand or the character itself. Whereas the Hulk 2003 movie, it's this very sincere, very dramatic for the genre film that's like, just not in anywhere near, I think, the kind of caliber or the widespread mainstream appeal that it needed to be to kind of justify that marketing, if any of that makes sense. With Spider-Man, obviously it's Kino, but it's a big blockbuster hit. Everybody and their mother loves Spider-Man. So like it kind of makes sense. It's a big popcorn movie that everybody can sit down and get down with. This film, as history's kind of unfolded, is very much not that. So it's just very interesting that they went this whole direction between the Hulk hands, the video game, and the Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, we'll get more into this in another episode, but this is very much a case of if Incredible Hulk had come out at that time, it would have been better received, and had this come out in 2008, it would have probably been better received.
Or if it came out now.
If it came out now, absolutely, yeah. But
if this came out now,
the taste of the time when it came out.
Yes.
And here's the thing is, like, again, with the 2 movies that were released this year, so, like, for example, X-Men 2000, the original X-Men movie, had a shit ton of merchandise aimed at kids. There was a whole toy line, there was everything. X2 didn't really have anything. There was no X2 toys in, like, Target or Walmart. Obviously there was X-Men stuff marketed at kids, but it was, like, X-Men Evolution. Like, that's why that cartoon was created, because those X-Men movies, I think they realized, were a little too adult. Obviously, kids were going to watch it. I'm not going to, they're not making, it's not Saving Private Ryan or anything, but, like, I think they realized what the audience for that was, and it wasn't primarily kids, and so they probably backed off of the marketing to kids, and that's why X-Men Evolution is created, for example. Daredevil 2003, it's also just lower budget, but there was no Daredevil marketing push insofar as, like, there wasn't, like, Colin Farrell action figures at Target. I did have a Ben Affleck Daredevil action figure that I got that year, but, I mean, it's just...
That's interesting you bring that up, because, it is a case of going on at the time. You're right, like, X2 had no action figure toy line, and nothing like that. No like smaller toys to appeal to kids. It was like you had the X-Men Evolution cartoon series, which was like it's a cartoon, so you think inherently it's for kids, and it's like it's more teen leaning. And then they had video games, which of course at the time was considered probably more for teenagers. They were usually rated like E10 or T for teen,
Yeah.
So and Daredevil as well was definitely not, I think, marketed nearly as much as like Hulk was in the same
Daredevil
way.
has a
Go ahead.
Daredevil has a director's cut that's rated R.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, they had they had a Game Boy Advance game or whatever that they canceled. Basically, that's all that they had going for it. Then it leads into Hulk, which is, probably the heaviest movie of all three of them. And somehow they had a video game, they had Hulk hands, they had a bunch of figures that you could buy, they had, Hulk splattered everywhere in every piece of Marvel merchandise you could imagine. There's a reason, and one of my favorite Marvel posters ever, he is like front and center with like Wolverine and Spider-Man.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's the thing, is this was at a time where the major Marvel characters were literally Spider-Man, Hulk, Wolverine, and then like what was number 4? Like Daredevil?
Like Daredevil,
maybe it was like because like
Rider was near the forefront a little bit more.
Yeah.
Captain America.
Captain America was still up front. Yep.
That's the thing.
As I would say, a better time for Marvel.
Yeah, well, okay, it was a time. It was a more balanced time.
Well,
it was more.
Here's the thing. I think that the whole reason that we kind of experienced the dissonance between like the marketing and the film itself that we got, and then why I feel like the marketing may have detracted against the film in that way, is because at the time, as we've kind of laid out here, Marvel was leveraging its IP, so it's putting its IP in these characters and its brand front and center. And so it was, obviously it's very marketable. These are, iconic characters. So it's able to pimp that shit out to all of these different kind of metamedias, and in multimedia, kind of, creations and projects. That being said, when you're shotgunning all of this, marketing and all this kind of IP branded stuff around the Hulk, which is cool and it works because it's the character. When you get to the movie, it kind of breaks ranks. You know what I mean? Because everything else is just like very bright. It's very like comic booky, in your face, and all that kind of stuff. And then you get to this very at times somber fucking movie, and you're like, wait a minute, somebody's kind of fucking up the vibe here. And I think that might have worked at least in some part against the film.
Yeah, and if anybody's just interested in the era that we're talking about, just go ahead and Google right now Scott Johnson Marvel art. He was the guy that did a lot of the Marvel art for a lot of the packaging, for a lot of like the candy and snacks that they would sell. And I guarantee you, if you grew up during this time, this art is just emblazoned on your brain. Like you just remember this, and I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same poster, Martin, of
like a
his Marvel art,
Marvel characters, and then they have like
let me just put it up to the camera. Is it this one?
Yep.
That's the one. Yeah. So, but like I'm looking here: Spider-Man, Wolverine, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, Captain America, Hulk, Daredevil. These are all at the front, and it's like a lot of these characters aren't even like Punisher is at the front. You know what I mean? Like these characters aren't even focused on nearly as much. It was a more diverse time for Marvel. It was a more fun time, And again, because they were marketing these things like actual blockbusters. We don't want to go full like consume SOOM. Like like feel free to edit us all into like the fucking soy jack face right now with our fucking.
I have a big. It's too easy.
Yeah, but no, but it was like so much fun as a kid.
Yeah.
You'd get your Hulk Pop-Tarts and you'd have your Spider-Man cereal and the Daredevil lollipops and stuff. Like it was meant to be fun at the time.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just
Well, it was fun at the time because it was a lot of one-off films, or you might get a sequel or a trilogy where it's like they're not trying to build towards a huge cinematic universe. It's just like, oh my god, there's a Hulk movie coming out. There's a Punisher movie next year. What? It's just the excitement of these characters being adapted. And it wasn't so much like, oh, how does this factor into the bigger picture? It's just like, oh shit, they're adapting this. Cool. And it was each one was given some kind of star treatment, and it was so cool to see at that time. And I like that you bring up Brave New World in the sense of like we're not seeing that as much. That movie doesn't feel to me like it's being marketed in a way of like, oh, a new Captain America movie and Red Hulk is in it. Okay, cool. It just feels like, oh, this is like them trying to tie up a lot of loose ends from like older movies now.
Yeah. I saw a Tide commercial with the Red Hulk in it today.
Oh,
like,
I did too.
That's the most marketing they've done, like outside of like just trailers. They're like Tide.
yeah. Or an Audi ad where someone's driving away from the Red Hulk.
It's like that one Chinese what is it ad where it was they put a black guy in the washer and he comes out Chinese, and
Oh my!
you remember that one? Have you seen that one?
Oh, Jesus
but
Christ!
instead of this one they put Red Hulk in the wash and it's Harrison Ford.
He's just like, what is this shit?
What is this shit?
Well, I mean, if we're going to dive into the movie, we should also talk about
The long road
led up to this. Yeah, what led up to this movie being made, which is we don't have to talk about the Incredible Hulk TV show. That's a heroic efforts for another day.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to force Nick to watch that
Every
the next time he's over my house.
single episode.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll just be
God.
like, Nick, you're gonna like it. Like, if you like Captain America 1990, if you like Captain America 1990, you will see the sauce of this.
Yeah, but Captain America 1990 was like a tight 80 minutes. You know?
Okay, but these are like tight 50 minutes.
Oh, God.
Little Hulk movies. There just happens to be like 70 of them.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, this was like an immensely popular show. It cemented the character as one of Marvel's icons, and it was the only successful live-action Marvel adaptation pre-Blade. So Hulk was obviously a huge character in the pop culture zeitgeist at this time. It was the movie, like a live-action feature film, big movie, was planned in the 90s with Jonathan Hensleigh, who would later go on to direct the Thomas Jane Punisher. Another banger. We're going to talk about that someday. But he was going to direct it, and there's a lot of similarities between the finished film and Hensleigh's project. It was going to feature mutant bugs, like giant mutated bugs, as villains, a la the eventual mutant poodles. But also, most interestingly, is it was going to utilize practical effects. And if you go on YouTube, you can find the behind the scenes of the big animatronic Hulk, or they have like inflatable muscles on like a human arm, so like it'll burst out of the shirt that it's wearing, which is really cool. It really looked like they were putting in like a lot of time and effort, and for whatever reason, it just didn't go forward. But a lot of it did carry over into Ang Lee's version.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, it's
I wonder how they
that I
would
wish
have.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I wonder how they would have balanced that, like the entire like inflatable suit. That sounds really dope from a practical effects standpoint, but I'm just really curious how they would have done the whole like transformation. Like, I think from what I do know of the Lou Ferrigno Hulk show, like they did a lot with camera work and perspective to like make him, who is granted a very large man, but like make him feel larger than life.
Yes, yeah, nobody over the height of 5'5" was cast in that show. Like
You had to make him look towering. Yeah. I wish we had gotten that. It's always a give and take thing of like, oh man, I wish I could have seen like what that version would have become. But at the same time, yeah, a lot of elements of it do carry over into the finished film from Ang Lee. There is this, I believe. Is there any script of it available online that we can find? I know we can see like the special effects tests and all that, but I'm curious if there's a script available at all.
I would have to do some more digging to see if I could really find it, because sometimes you can find the script, but like it's just it's you're either going to get a virus on your computer or it's just someone has like written it as like a fanfic.
Are
you know what I mean?
The Spider-Man 4 script that I read in like 2011 that had Carnage and the Lizard wasn't real.
It's about as real as that Joker origin movie trailer from 2009 that used Brokeback Mountain scenes.
Hell yeah.
In it. Which I watched again and again and again. I'm like, this looks pretty good. Little did I know it looked good because it was an Ang Lee movie that they were using footage from. But yes, so eventually the man, the myth, the legend, Ang Lee joins the project, and history is basically made because one of the greatest comic book movies of all time is set to happen. But he assembles a cast of Eric Bana, Jennifer Connelly, Sam Elliott, Nick Nolte, and we should just get it out of the way. They're all perfect.
Yes.
They are all
Oh, yes.
pitch
Sam Elliott too.
perfect. Oh, did I say Sam Elliott? But
No,
yes,
you
Sam
did
Elliott
mention
too.
him, yeah. It's pitch perfect.
Okay,
yeah.
so the main four of Bana, Connolly, Elliott, and Nolte are
So good.
all perfect. And I don't mean perfect as in there are certain characters, every actor brings something to the role, right? Of whatever they're playing, but there's not always actors that it's like, oh, that is 100% that character. All four of these people are. Like, you could not cast a better, and I love William Hurt, and good on Harrison Ford, but you could not get a more perfect Thaddeus Ross than Sam Elliott. He is so perfect, and we'll get into it. But the pathos that he brings to his character is amazing too. But the thing is okay. So the last time. The second to last time I rewatched this was with Nick when I was forcing him to. The last time I rewatched this was last summer when I forced my girlfriend to watch it, which is, I'm sure, how she wanted to spend an evening of our 3-night beach getaway trip. I'm sure that's how you wanted to spend it.
It's
I'm like, babe!
about a character for you.
Yeah. But the thing I noticed each time, and it surprises me every time, is I'm like, oh my god, everyone in this is acting like adults.
Yes.
Just like the performances are like adults, but the characters act like adults as well, which is I think is a huge plus, because, for example, like even stuff that we've talked about that we really like on this show, the characters are sometimes just cartoons of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, we all love Donal Logue, but he is just the comedic relief of Ghost Rider. But like every actor in this is acting like an adult. And I guess, I mean, if we really want to just dive into it, we can talk about the opening of the film that has Bruce Banner's childhood, which is, I mean, I think it's just, I think it might arguably be the strongest part of the film overall. It's certainly, like, I watch it on YouTube quite a bit, but it's just...
With the opening credits with, Danny Elfman's score going through, there's a lot of string work in it. Oh, it's so good, and you're seeing a lot of those strange transitions, the DNA kind of getting all grody, and you see purple and green flashing at you.
The syringe coming down into the thing, and the great thing about it... Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. I want to hear.
I gotta get it because so the themes of this are fathers and sons, and if you haven't seen the movie, just stop and watch it, and then come back and listen to this. But I'm assuming that most people have seen this movie. It sets up Nick Nolte as the film's villain perfectly, because you see young David Banner in his lab, and it has that great Danny Elfman score, which, by the way, I think is equivalent to his Spider-Man and Batman scores in terms of quality. It's that good. It deserves more attention, and it should be as iconic. But you see him in his lab, and he's, experimenting with jellyfish, and then he's, like, cutting open, like, a starfish, and he's doing all this kind of... but it starts to get more and more sinister. Like, it takes on a more sinister tone, and then there's that part where he has the monkey in the glass, and, like, you see him, like, gassing it, but he's just like petting it with those like gloves where they can stick their hands in, and he's just petting it, and you see it like starting to panic and freak out, and he's just observing it. It's so eerie. And then you immediately cut to his wife telling him they're going to have a baby, which you then immediately cut to her giving a very disturbing, violent birth, and he is outside of the hospital room. He's not even in there watching his son be born. Like that great shot. That great shot of him in the hallway, like where it's just his silhouette and he's just got his shoulders down as his wife screams. You're like, ooh, you just know immediately this guy is fucked up.
It is the father and son. It is the curse that is carried over. When she goes, I'm having a baby, he don't look happy. He looks fucking just crushed, basically.
Yes, well, because also he is experimenting with himself too. He's experimenting with his own DNA, which leads to his whole... And we won't go through the whole plot of this, but I think the opening of the film is important because it really sets the tone and the stage for the whole thing. He is experimenting on himself, and he... As he says later in a monologue, he's both terrified and curious of what's going to happen to his son, but his son... There's literally within a minute, it shows him watching Bruce in the crib, and he's looking at him the same way he looked at the monkey in the lab. Like he takes the pacifier out of Bruce's mouth.
Just see what he will do.
Just to watch him cry. Yeah. And you see him looking through the bars at him. Like, he's not even looking over. He's separated, you know, and he's like observing him like an experiment. And you see like Bruce's skin turn blotchy, and you're just like, oh my God. Like, it's the Hulk was born like at conception.
Yeah, I love.
Hulk begins at conception, everybody.
Yeah, I love how you kind of like, you know, frame that, because I think the film, like you said, does a beautiful job of setting up Nolte's character and just how like evil this guy is. And the thing I like the most about the character is the fact that he's not cartoonishly evil. Like Andy said, everyone here is acting like actual people living in this world, actual functioning adults, you know. And Nick Nolte's character has like his own motivations for why he does everything, like any good villain. And what I like about it is that the film tees up that he's not some mad scientist in the, like, you know, big hair over the top cartoony way. He's a mad scientist in the very real way, which is he's very clinical, detached, and like sociopathic. Like, he views his son as, like Andy said, an experiment, as just another organism to test his, you know, bio experiments on. And that I really like that dynamic, and I think it's very important that the film sets it up like that, because when you do see him and he does go off the deep end into doing mad scientist shit, despite the monologues, despite the kind of cackling, despite making giant, you know, radioactive gamma poodles with huge nuts, like, despite all of that, at no
despite
point,
looking like Nick Nolte looked in 2003,
you know, despite it all, it never comes across like as something that you should point and laugh at. You know what I mean? You can laugh about it, you know, out of context, or like, you know, if you're watching this film just for the, you know, shits and giggles, but like in the context of the film, of this character as he exists within this world, at no point does it ever present, and nor does Nolte ever present himself as his character as something to be mocked. You know what I mean? No. It's very intimidating, especially this opening. It's a cold ass opening because it's cold blooded. You know what I mean? Like him like doing all that shit, and the editing and the pacing and cutting from him working on these like animals to like jumping to his fucking family and he's experimenting on them. Like, that's a really kind of eerie fucking transition, but it tees up his character perfectly.
Well, they have that great moment where it's Christmas time, and he's like opens the presents with young Bruce, and it's like a dinosaur, and it's like a monkey toy, but they're like making them fight each other. Of course, Bruce has the dinosaur, which is green. It's like, oh, Ang Lee, I love you, I just love you. And so, but what's great is it sort of just goes through Bruce's childhood very, very quickly. And we should say we're giving Nick Nolte all this praise. The actor playing it in this sequence is not Nick Nolte. His name escapes me at the moment. I should have put it in the outline. But he does a fantastic job. He is terrifying. He looks like a sociopath. Like, and they have that great moment.
He's got that they have that stare.
They have that great little preview moment where Bruce comes in after playing with a friend, and he's like bleeding or something because he's fallen down, and you hear the kid in the other kid in the background go like, "Oh, Jack hit Bruce, but Bruce wouldn't hit him back. He just stood there shaking." And you're just like, "Oh my God!" Like, the Hulk is there. The Hulk is within him. Like, already he's bottling all this stuff up at like 8. You know what I mean? And so, but then of course, there's the whole where David Banner is thrown out of the experiment, and he literally sets off a nuclear gamma bomb in the like a terrorist attack. Yes, a terrorist attack in this desert town that they're living in. And he goes home, and they have that great moment where he throws the mom into the bedroom, slams the door, and Bruce is just listening to them fight, and he's getting louder and louder, and you hear her like begging, and he's like, "No, no," and then the door just opens and you cut to black, and it's like, ooh, oh my God, like, what an amazing 4 minutes of celluloid.
Yeah, the actor's name I found for younger David Banner is Paul Kersey. It's also the name of Charles Bronson in the Death Wish movies, fun fact. This is actually the last movie he did. He quit acting after this.
Really?
Yeah.
Paul Kersey, we got to bring you back for a Hulk Legacy sequel.
He's up in Minnesota now, so, you know, he's out there.
Good for him.
He's
Good
out
for
there
him. He did a
experimenting on chimps and children.
Chimps and children. But I love this movie because it sets a villain archetype that we very rarely, if never, see in a comic book movie, and that is a father figure, a father himself. Not a father figure, because you get that sometimes, but the actual father himself, who is so fucking evil, and you could tell immediately does not care about his family. He'll put on the guise that he cares about them to get what he wants. There is, this amazing sequence where he's with Betty Ross, he's just kind of laying out his life story about, like how I lost everything, and, it was like basically he's just going, when I killed my wife completely accidentally, definitely not, me trying to cover my tracks or anything. I slipped and the knife went right in her. Whoopsies. It's beautifully performed. Yeah. It's so great. But he's just doing it so he can get closer and closer to Bruce in the movie. So he can get one step closer to, not Bruce actually, to the Hulk, to, as he puts it, his real son. Yeah. He don't give a fuck about Bruce. Yeah. He doesn't like him. He wants Hulk.
Yeah, we'll just go all in on David Banner as a character right now, because he really is he is the highlight of this movie, if there is one. Yes. And Eric Bana does a fantastic job. Absolutely. We've already established everyone does a fantastic job. We will get to the Hulk in a minute. Yes. But the through line of David Banner is fantastic. And what's great about it is he, like you said, he's trying to get closer and closer to Bruce. So there's that moment where he's working as the janitor in Bruce's lab. Yep. And she's like, oh, what happened to the night shift guy? And he's like, he's dead. I'm the new guy. Yeah. And as a kid, I just thought that was kind of creepy. But as an adult, I'm like, oh, he killed him. He killed him so he could get close to Bruce. Yeah. And what's great is that he tries to treat Bruce like a son for much of the movie. Yep. But there's just that underlaying of, he's psychotic, and his ultimate goal is the power that he created, that in his mind, his son unrightfly stole from him. His power. He's like, I was experimenting on myself. And he's like, and him, myself, not him. But he has that great line where he says, it's the only path of the truth. It's how we go beyond God's boundaries. Like, he thinks that he's becoming a god by tapping into human potential.
Can I do the Nick Nolte bit?
Yes, you can.
Stop what? Stop what? What about all those men out there with their uniforms barking and swallowing orders?
He's gonna make them and their flags and their anthems
disappear in a flash.
So great. Yes.
Yeah, he thinks it is the power of a god, basically.
Yes. One of the most evil comic book villains ever, because one of the most evil comic
book movie villains, and one of the best, 100%.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, we can't go through the whole plot, mostly because we're recording very late. But we should just jump around. Yeah. We could talk about Eric Bana as Bruce next, and his portrayal of the Hulk. I think he's terrific. There's a lot of people who say, especially at the time, the reviews would say that he's kind of flat. I don't think so. I think he does very good. He's reserved, and he's bottling this up. Yep. He does not want what's in him to get out, even pre being, turned into the Hulk.
Yep.
Well, I agree.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think I completely agree. I think Banner's performance, it can be best described as reserved. And I like that. I think he portrays it well, trying to hold back just through his attempt, speaking as a character, through his attempt to contain his anger, which is probably his foundational and primordial emotion. In an attempt to suppress that, he in turn suppresses all of his emotions. Yes. So that's why he comes off as kind of distant to everybody else. Bordering on just maybe even you kind of question okay, is there something off with this guy? Does he have some kind of autism almost? Because he's just very his social skills are not there, and that's because he has suppressed all emotion to that way he cuts off as many pathways leading back to anger as humanly possible. And I think that's a brilliant acting choice. I don't know if that's a combination of Bana and Ang Lee as the director working on that for the character. I imagine some kind of combination of both, but whatever the case may be, I think that's a really, really strong choice for that character, and I think a unique way to present Banner. I think Bruce Banner often gets portrayed in regardless of the medium, often gets portrayed as kind of a maybe scuttering or very visibly sweaty, and nervous kind of guy. That's always like stressing about the Hulk and trying to contain it that way. And he's very kind of, I'm not going to say dramatic, but he's very like intense and at times over the top in trying to be like, you don't want to see me angry, like, oh, suppress. Whereas Banner's performance is very much the opposite. I don't see that portrayal of this character very often, so I really appreciate that choice and his like portrayal of making him, like I said, just suppress on all levels, keep everything bottled in, because any kind of emotion can turn into anger at the end of the day.
Well, it's funny because
I'm seeing this.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm seeing this right here. Ang Lee cited King Kong, Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde, Beauty and the Beast, and Faust as a way to interpret this story. So already you can see that he's drawn some pretty heavy mythologies.
For sure. And I like that you bring up how he cuts himself off from everything, because that's a big part of Eric Bana's Bruce Banner, is that he's the guy who has no social skills whatsoever, but any kind of light that could lead to possible stress, he also cuts off. And they do something that we don't really see also, along with the father figure, we don't see a lot in superhero movies, is him and Betty have already gone out. They had dated at some point, and it didn't work out, basically.
Yeah.
Because he cuts himself off, and that's a point she makes, is that you were never really here with me.
Well, one of the best pieces of writing advice I've ever heard, again, secondhand, is Denny O'Neil was saying, don't waste the audience's time. Start the story as late in the narrative as you possibly can, with it still making sense. Yes. And that's what's great, is a lesser movie would have had the introduction to them. They're sitting at a nice restaurant in San Francisco, and she's like, Bruce, I can't do it. You're too, just spilling it out. No. He rides up with his bicycle helmet on, yeah. Well, greets Stan Lee and Lou Ferrigno, walks in and then gets made fun of by the dorkiest fucking scientist apprentice on the planet. Which for all intents and purposes is just Rick Jones.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what he is. Even though he gets pretty much thrown aside by the fucking after 20 minutes of the movie, basically. But also, it's like, that's why Eric Bana for me is my favorite Bruce Banner performance, at least in film. Because here's the thing, he is absolutely the one that plays Banner as a more reserved, calculated, just like, I'm not going to trust myself, I'm not going to get involved in that degree, I'm just going to focus on my course. And it's an interesting performance because on the other end of the spectrum, the only other Hulk performance you had at the time was Bill Bixby, who was like, the smoothest motherfucker alive, who, could charm the pants off of anybody, essentially. And boy, did he. Good for him. So it's he was a phenomenal actor, and I love. I would probably say like his Banner is iconic for a reason. He was a fantastic performer, and he knocked that role out of the park. I love. That show is so iconic because of Ferrigno and Bill Bixby. They made that show what it is with their performances. Eric Bana brings a whole other pathos to the character that you just can't really do in 70s television, where it's a very episodic format. And it's something where it's like, it's interesting to see him bounce off of these other actors, because it's like, you can see the warmth come out when he's interacting with Connolly. You could see kind of the uncomfortability when he's in the same room as Sam Elliott. And then you can see the rage bubble up whenever Nolte is even within breathing distance of him.
Yes, because the Hulk is this subconscious memory that lives within him, and it's just going to come out. And if we want to juxtapose his performance with the Hulk's, because the Hulk is a character in and of himself in this. Also played by Ang Lee, yes. And we can talk about the effects in a minute, but like his performance juxtaposed with the Hulk, they really are two separate characters. Yes. And what I love about it is that he knows that the Hulk is there even before he's ever transformed into the Hulk. Like, he knows that there's something within him that he does not have control over. And what I love about that is, at the time, especially if people were wanting something like Spider-Man, they probably thought this performance was a little wooden. They probably thought he was a little underwritten, but it's like, no, he's reserved. It's not going to tell you everything. He is a guy who has, like Nick Cage says, like the scraping at the door, but like literally the Hulk is like punching through the door in his mind, which is his parents' bedroom door that he heard them fighting behind. Like the metaphor is just so great. It's so, like, Ang Lee takes advantage of the medium of film.
Yes.
to tell this story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in a very, very obvious way if you have watched this movie when we talk about the editing.
Well, should we just jump into the editing? Does it work?
It's fine. Yeah, I like the idea. I think it unfortunately does put off a lot of people. But I think it adds to the experience. The only time I don't like it at all in the movie is when the douchebag dies. Where I'm just like, okay, that was a little too much.
Josh Lucas?
Yes. He turns into a cutout that starts spinning.
Yeah,
I kind of love it.
I mean, I can definitely like appreciate it. Like, it's fun. So like to kind of jumping ahead, like, yeah, I think Ang Lee kind of gets a little too nutty with it near the end of the film with like the literal like comic book page to like jump out and cutaways, or like Martin just said the like douchebag guy like spinning like out of frame like it's a fucking YouTube poop edit. You know what I mean?
He spins out of frame, and then the camera zooms back, and you see a bunch of panels everywhere. And then it zooms in on another panel.
Yeah,
it's
cool. Love it.
I love
it's
that.
kind of
so cool.
It's kind of like a high. It's kind of like a high budget version of the fucking iCarly transition, you know?
Yeah.
So on a level, I can appreciate it. It's zany, it's out there, it's fun. Like when we run it back and watch it, I enjoy it. You know what I mean? It's grown on me. I've come to love it. But I completely understand. And my personal feelings when I first saw it was, what the fuck is this? This is such a whack and insane like fucking transition. Why would you do this? But it's crazy because that's only really at the end of the film, from my recollection. In the beginning of the film, like how the actual film itself is cut and edited, I really, really enjoy. It's very like stylish and at times like snappy, and there are I'm forgetting the exact context of the scene, but it's when Bruce is first experimenting with like the regenerative like bioengineering stuff that like kind of reproduces the Hulk, and he's experimenting, I believe, on a toad or something like that. And
great effect. It was a great effect.
Oh yeah, exactly. And like that scene when the toad, like this poor little fucking frog, just explodes inside of the machine, and just like a pop. It's a great effect. It looks great. But like the transition of that scene and how like it's edited and how the cuts go on that. When I watched this film with Andy, that one time, it's one of those moments that kind of clicked to me where I like understood like why this is Kino, and it was in that scene. So I think for the majority of the film, the editing is perfectly fine. I think it works. It's stylish. It's very like cinematic. It's just at the very end, he just gets a little too off the rails. For me, even though it's grown on me, I can definitely understand why general audience didn't vibe with it at those moments like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's asking a little too much of the audience in 2003. So.
Yeah, who really has tried this again? You know, it's like, I feel like this, and I'm saying this complimentary, this and Schumacher's Batman Forever are two movies that really tried to embrace aspects of comic books that movies never have again. Because people got too scared of it to try it again. But like for Hulk, it's the comic book panel editing, and it kind some scenes look like the Discord call that we're in right now. But like I kind of love it. Like there's moments in there where you can see. I don't know how else you would do it, because you can see action and reaction at the same time.
Yes.
And the way that it's written into the story, I think is really effective.
No, I agree. I like the editing of it. I think it's really tight. And I agree with Nick to a degree of like, I think by the time we get to the third act, it gets a little too much. But then during the climax, it kind of cuts back again. So it's just the very specific period where he's escaping the base where I'm just like, okay, guys, we're going a little too far on this. But there's a great transition also, or not transition, but a great visual effect they do in the edit that also happens near the beginning of the film. And that is the part where the big accident happens, where he shoves fucking the Rick Jones wannabe out of the way and jumps in front of the thing. And you have just the light effect of,
Yeah.
It's such a simple little tool, but it adds so much to the moment. It makes that moment work.
But it zooms into his eye, and you just hear the heartbeat as the gamma bomb goes off. The gamma bomb that his father set off in the 60s or 70s or whatever. And then and you see the Hulk eye. It's just like twitching. We're gonna bounce all around, but like there's that moment with Banner where he's the fucking Hulk is dropping from the sky and is like unconscious, and then it cuts to just Bruce Banner shaving, and he notices in the mist behind the mirror the Hulk watching him, and he's tracking him, and then he just bursts through and grabs him. Like, that image has become iconic.
Yes.
In and of itself.
Hulk like busting through like the glass right there. It has become iconic. It's actually solidified in my mind. It's like a formative memory because much like Martin, this is a film very much for and about fathers and sons. So much like Marty here, I saw this with my dad at the theater, and I remember being scared shitless, dude, when Hulk, like that scene when he like wipes the mist or the steam, and then he like busts out of the glass, like you just see like his kind of like the grunting noise of the Hulk, and then boom, jumps through the fucking screen. Basically, that scared the fuck out of me when I was a little kid when I saw that. But it has become, as Andy said, a very iconic image. And I think now, whether through meme or sincerity, like people when they think of the Hulk, I think that's probably one of the first images they think of is him like busting through like the glass or the logo or something.
Well, he's holding him and he goes, does he say like puny human basically? And then they're playing that bizarre Australian instrument in the background.
Oh, the fucking didgeridoo, yeah.
Didgeridoo, yeah. Which also great fucking idea to use a didgeridoo in the fucking Hulk soundtrack. That's great.
Yeah. Danny Elfman's score is fantastic, and what I love about it is, okay, this is a deep cut, but remember the DVD menu? Like, where you see, like, the heartbeat increasing, and it's like, dun, 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 dun. In the same way that Danny Elfman's Spider-Man score almost sounds like a spider crawling along a web, with that...
Oh, yes.
This feels like a heartbeat increasing, where it's like dun 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 dun, like, and it gets higher and higher and higher. Yeah, and it's like really is going. And one of my favorite parts is when the Hulk escapes the base and he's just jumping from rock to rock, and they have like that weird choral singing going on, but it's so calm. And you see on his face as the wind's going through his hair and stuff, you're like, this is just something that wants to exist. This is a child that was brought into this world completely involuntarily, abandoned, and just wants to exist. I mean, it Frankenstein. You can see
Hulk begins at 100%, conception, as Andy said earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. Hulk begins at conception.
Well,
incredible conception.
The incredible conception of Hulk. I love that you bring up that. Yeah, he is a child, and I think that factors into the performance of Hulk, where he is the side of Bruce Banner that hasn't been allowed to play ever, and he's finally let loose, and he's just fucking stumbling everywhere. He's just freaking the fuck out, basically.
Yeah, there's a great moment in when he's escaping the base where General Ross is watching him on the monitor, and it's after he's thrown everybody around and but like you see and also Ang Lee's score is so fucking awesome. I'm gonna clip this and put it on the Instagram, like just so people can see exactly what I'm talking about. But like Ang Lee's score is like dun 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 dun, and he picks up some big piece of equipment and just chucks it across the thing, and he turns around and he's like heaving and breathing super heavy, and he almost looks like he's gonna cry. He looks like a toddler throwing a tantrum. He looks like a toddler picking up a vase and throwing it, because you gotta remember, like, the Hulk only exists really when he's transformed into the Hulk. So at that point he's like, what, 7 hours old? You know what I mean? Like, he's 7 hours old, but he has the strength of an atom bomb. You know what I mean? And like that's in the first transformation, they have that great part where he sees. Yes, but he sees Nick Nolte, and Nick Nolte kind of puts his hand on his cheek, and they have that wonderful score, and you really see the heart in the Hulk's eyes, and he's really remembering, and then he remembers just who his dad really is, and he like freaks out, but he busts through the ceiling, and he just lets out that like guttural roar as you hear the police coming, and he jumps away. Like, that is, and I'm sounding pretentious, I don't give a fuck, I've loved this movie for 22 years, that is the roar of a child being born. It is the violence of childbirth made sentient.
Absolutely.
And as he jumps away, and you can see like his little figure bouncing away, like it's they've spared no detail, but as he's jumping away, you hear the sirens coming, and that is the forces of man coming to try and deal with this incredibly like ancient unknowable thing.
Big brain moment. Big brain moment. The wires are connecting here. And that is why fucking Nick Nolte, David Banner, is crying, because this is him at the actual birth of his son. He is in the hospital room for the birth of his real son, and he's in tears, and he's like overjoyed.
Ooh,
he's like, my son.
I love it. Good connection.
It's so good. Yeah, and he just throws a fucking tantrum, and it's just great.
Well, I like that too. And as the film progresses, you see him start to think things out a little bit more and kind of like connect dots of like, oh, this is how this works. I like that. Like, he is a toddler that is learning.
You mean like when he bites the head off the missile and spits it at the helicopter? A common complaint I saw about this is that people were like, oh, there's not enough Hulk in it. There's a fuck ton of Hulk in this movie.
A lot.
Once the Hulk gets into the movie, he kind of doesn't leave. Like there's tons of long extended periods,
and they include the part about the more he turns into the Hulk, the angrier he gets, the bigger he fucking gets, to the point that there's an amazing moment right before the dogfight where he is just fucking towering over Betty Ross, butt ass naked.
He's like he's like King Kong size.
Yes.
He's like the size of like Peter Jackson's King Kong, which I mean, maybe we'll come to an impasse here, but I think they go a little too overboard with how big the Hulk gets. I don't think the Hulk should ever be King Kong size. I just, to me, it turns him into too much of an inhuman monster.
For me, this works in this movie specifically because it's the first time he's Hulk. He has all of this rage. He has decades of rage saved up in his body. Yeah. And by the end of it, he kind of turns into by the climax, he's kind of more of a normal-sized Hulk because he's gotten all of that stored-up radiation just kind of out of him, basically. All that stored-up rage out of his body.
Yes.
So I'm okay with it in this movie. Now, if this was something that continued on and on and on, where we're talking like Mark Ruffalo Hulk, who's been Hulk for like 20 years or whatever, then it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
But in this one, I'm okay with it because it is the birth. It is decades of rage stored up in this body, and it's just starting to overflow. And also, God, I love that one scene, the juxtaposition of him being like 20, 30 feet tall, and it makes you understand like how big the fucking mutant dogs are, because they're as big as basically as a truck.
Yes, yeah. Because people, it's a poodle. Yeah, it's not a regular sized poodle. It is a SUV-sized dog that's coming out. When I was 7,
I did not like poodles, so seeing a giant fucking poodle scared the shit out of me.
Those things are fucking demonic looking.
Yes. Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Again, going back to when I saw this film as a kid, those dogs also scared the shit out of me. Yes. Like, I was already at the time like struggling with like being afraid of like dogs, and then so seeing that film really fucked me up. Yeah.
Well, it's because you got a poodle and a fucking, what is the other one? It's like one's a bulldog, and the other one is like a full on just
it's a Rottweiler.
It's a Rottweiler, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and he's got the big fucking grin on his teeth, and he's like,
it's very, very scary.
Yeah.
But on
one of the nuts.
Oh my
God. On that note, aside from the massive mutant dog balls, speaking of the CGI, I really appreciate Marty's kind of interpretation of why the Hulk is that big. So for that like kind of headcanon-y reason, I'm fine with Hulk being that massive. I tend to land though with Andy, where I think that Hulk should not be like King Kong sized. I think he should be like big as fuck, obviously, but like still somewhat reasonably human, and his strength, like him being able to lift and do the things that he does, I think is accentuated by him being not too big and still being able to have that much strength. Like I want him to have the strength of like a 30-foot tall, humanoid, but compact down to maybe like a 10 to 15 foot tall person. You know what I mean?
Well, if they had done like an actual Hulk too, and not like soft reboot with the Incredible Hulk, and they still kept him getting bigger and bigger, I would agree with you guys on that. I would, absolutely. But in this context of this movie, for me, it worked. So.
Well, because, and this is a bit of a leap of logic, but like if you're following that sort of sci-fi logic, like what is he going to get to Godzilla size? Like if he gets really, really bad, you know what I mean? Like that's just I as just design wise, I've always felt that there should be a cap on the Hulk. Having said that, I really like the design of this Hulk. We were talking about this just before, but. Obviously we're going to be doing the Incredible Hulk after this. A big problem people have with that design is that he's like way too shredded. Like he's like really looks like not an ounce of fat on him. Mm-hmm. I think they found and this Hulk looks kind of puffy. Yeah, is the thing. Like he's very like
thick.
Well, he looks like those like old timey, whatchamacallit, like strong men. that would like lift the bar above their head, and the weight is like a circle for some reason. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it's like spheres.
old tiny.
His muscle doesn't have definition. He's very poofy looking. I get what you mean. Like he's not defined.
A lot of mass.
Yeah.
A lot of mass.
Yeah, I think they found a happy medium with the Mark Ruffalo design in the first Avengers, where it's like there's definition, but not like he's not shredded. He doesn't look like fucking like Glenn Powell. You know what I mean? Like,
well, so I'm glad you bring this up, because that's also what I was getting at by bringing us kind of in this direction. Is let's talk about like the CGI and the effects. I think that's probably, if we're looking back at this film as we do with Heroic Efforts, then one of the things we have to analyze is the audience reaction to that design, how they kind of interpreted that, and our own feeling towards it. I personally come on the side of one, totally understanding where probably most people felt at the time, which is like, I don't really like, I'm not really super down with the design in this movie. And that's before we start talking about the actual CGI effects themselves, but like, I'm not super down. I love all of the emotion in his eyes. I think that's a brilliant like part of it. But I'm not feeling super like puffy Hulk. I'm not feeling like Hulk like this current design. And for me, the biggest thing for like Hulk as a character design that works best is when you get his proportions right. And for me, he's just way too thick in his forelimbs. Like his legs and feet are just way too chunky for it to like really look right to me. Like he just looks like a fucking cube at some angles, you know?
He's a toddler. It's okay. He's going to have fat feet. Give him a break. No, I'm kidding.
he's gonna have little fat rolls on his fucking ankles and shit. So like for me at least, I that's where I come down. Like Andy said, I think the Mark Ruffalo design, really just the design.
Just the design, nothing else.
Yeah, nothing really else. But I think the design probably like is the best Hulk's ever looked on screen.
Yes. I agree with you guys on that one. I do like this design. For me, it works in the context of the film because, again, puffy full of radiation. Okay, cool. I can justify it and be like, all right, I'm fine with it. But I think this is the divide that starts to happen where it's like, just because you don't fuck with the design does not mean that the CG itself is bad. Because the CG in this movie is fucking amazing to this day. It is great. This isn't a Spider-Man 2002 or Daredevil 2003 incident where you're like, there's some shots you're like, oh god. No, this is like, it consistently looks remarkable for even today, where it's the way he looks in this is so defined, and you can see the fucking pores on his skin. And I look at like Red Hulk, and I'm just like, man, CG sure is just flatlined, hasn't it?
Dude, I mean,
Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Sorry, no. Just to follow up on Marty's point, I completely agree. Yeah, exactly. Even though I don't rock with the design that heavy, I think the CGI is really, really well. I mean, it's stood the test of time for the most part, I would say. And like you said, the pores are one thing. The light, what really got me was the lighting. Despite him being very like bright green, like it's a very like standoutish like bright green
on his skin, the way it
like the effects they have on there. And mind you, this is way before we had any kind of dynamic lighting effects and ray tracing that we do now with CGI. So for them to be able to map him into this world and have the light and like the water effects like reflect on him like in a pretty goddamn like realistic way, it's really, really impressive.
Someone spent a whole year working on CG dog balls to make it look convincing. That's dedication right there.
Shine just right in the moonlight.
Just right in the moonlight, just perfectly.
All those little peach fuzz hairs on there. The thing about the Hulk in this, though, is I think this is the dawn of like CGI characters, right? Mm-hmm. And you had like two different let's say like polar opposites of CG before this. You could take something like Jurassic Park as an example of like a fully CGI'd character, if you're counting the T-Rex as a character, which it is. Or you could take like Godzilla 1998 as how a fully CGI character is going to look. And we
don't forget though, this is also the period where Gollum became a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, but the thing is, I think they went into this almost as, okay, this is going to be an experiment in a fully CGI character. Yes. What property can we experiment with this on? You know what I mean? And that's the whole, because the thing is again, if we're mentioning the effects, all of the destruction scenes in this looks so good because all of those sets were really built and blown apart by air cannons and wires. So when the Hulk is busting through a wall, that's a real wall that's being blown apart. They just added the CGI Hulk in after, and it just works so well. And that's why, you know, like, as much as I like the Edward Norton movie too, that's why when you see Edward Norton's Hulk, like, punch a car and pull it apart and put the things, you know, like, it's all CGI. It looks like a video game at that point. And that's where you sort of, and that's a big criticism of Incredible Hulk, is that the third act is just a video game. Like, it's like Transformers, which is valid. But that's because they didn't put that effort into that movie to have real sets blow apart. This is, Hulk 2003 was made in that happy medium where they still had to rely on practical effects, but could augment it with CGI effects.
Yes. Yeah, you know? I'm so glad you brought that up, Andy, because I think that paints kind of like the perfect reason as to why this works so well. Is they clearly, like the producers of this, lean much more towards the Jurassic Park side of that spectrum, where they were mixing in the practical effects, not to the extent that, like, I believe, I can't remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Weta Workshop that Andy Serkis and them utilized. Yeah, so Weta Workshop, obviously absolute pioneers, and what they do with Lord of the Rings and Gollum and all that kind of stuff is, like, incredible in its own thing. But that's a different beast. Even though this was coming out the same year, it's a different beast compared to what the Hulk was doing, which, again, I think leans far more on the Spielberg side of things, where they were using practical effects and physical objects to elevate the CGI. And that's the key point. Marty made a perfect contrast to that with the Red Hulk in the Brave New World, like, trailers that we've seen so far. The compositing for that character with the lighting and everything like that, when they have a red hulked out Harrison Ford, it looks not even just fake. It doesn't even look like they're in the same, like, film. Yeah. It looks like it's like he's just a hologram. Well, you know, even within
in certain shots, it's literally just Anthony Mackie in his cap suit walking onto a green screen stage, and they go like cherry blossoms, a street, cars, Red Hulk.
And that's so disappointing, because you see that and you're like, it immediately, like, takes you out of it. It breaks the immersion, like, wholesale. Whereas Ang Lee's Hulk came out in 2003, but like Andy said, and this is just the banger part of, like, this film, all of those real, very physical object heavy sets that are being blown apart, you know, with air canisters and pyrotechnics and everything like that. When you composite in this pretty high quality CGI model with it, now you're mixing two of those part of the art forms to elevate the final image that you see. That's why you can have a design that I don't fuck with, that I think looks at times very goofy, and I'm still locked the fuck in watching him bust shit up and, like, cheering and being like, this looks incredible, because you're able to marry those two aspects of it. Whereas when I'm looking at, like, the Red Hulk and I see him tearing up half the fucking White House, I'm like, none of this is real. Like, not even for a single second does my brain interpret what's going on in the context of this film as actually happening.
Yep.
Yes, and you got to remember, this is the era where, again, Jurassic Park, they built a giant T-Rex head, like, mechanical, that would come down and with irises that contracted, you know, but then they also use that in the exact same scene as a fully CGI T-Rex coming through. So, you know, just speaking of what Nick was talking about, I could easily see how if this was made 5 years earlier and it was the Jonathan Hensley one, they could have had those Stan Winston, like, arms bursting apart and blowing up, and then, you know, you cut to the fully CGI Hulk and still use those techniques. Like, I could see how that would be done. Although if you do see the behind the scenes, it's like a full, like, Hulk upper torso and head, like, that would, like, move and grab and stuff. I'm like, that's pretty fucking cool. Yeah. Like, but yes, the effects of this are fucking great. They augment an already mature story. And the thing about it is, I guess if we want to get back to sort of the themes it explores and stuff, is there's two sets of fathers and children, and it's, you know, General Ross and Betty, and it's David Banner and Bruce Banner. And the reason I think Bruce and Betty are attracted to each other and get along is because they both fucking hate their dads, and their dads are, like, the real fucking monsters. Like, there's that great, again, a lot of this stuff I didn't understand when I was a kid, right? But, like, the way that they show Betty as a kid eating ice cream with her dad, and then the fucking attack that David Banner causes makes him leave her behind in the ice cream store. That scared the fuck out of me.
Yes.
Like when he's like all happy and he's eating ice cream with her, and then just the fucking Jeep rolls up and he just salutes and gets in.
Yeah.
Like, and he's just gone.
And I love that you bring up that, they hate their fucking fathers, and it shows how they're able to kind of connect together, because I love that also when Betty has the dream and the memory, at first it's like she kind of thinks of her father in the ice cream store, and then it's replaced with Bruce eventually as her dad, and he like reaches out like he's gonna hurt her basically, and he's just like, I never do that. It's that fear that is inherent because you have a bad relationship with your father, so you're afraid of your partner doing that to you.
And then when he transforms back and she's like trying to comfort him, he like grabs her and like almost like strangles her, because he's still just filled with like adrenaline and everything like that. There's so many parts we could talk about how great this is, but there's one. And again, we're bouncing around, but one of my favorite things that brings the entire theme of this movie home, and this is like, might actually be my favorite part of the whole movie, the Hulk's not even in it. So after the Hulk is presumed dead, the fight is over, they've released a nuclear bomb, but like, you see Sam Elliott just sort of sitting there, and like, I think Betty like puts her arm on his shoulder, because like even he doesn't want to have to do this. And then it cuts to a year later, and he calls her. And just the visual storytelling of this is great, because she's in her lab and they're talking. She's like, so how are you? And he's just out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, like a tiny speck in this like white sand, just bleak, almost alien world. And he's like, oh, people are seeing things every day, except now everything's green, And so like it already is setting up that sort of Bill Bixby.
Every time I think of this movie, I always think of that moment where he goes like, I'm so sorry, Betty.
I was gonna bring that up. Okay, you're saying it's a laugh. That's like my favorite part. Like that actually, like
it's great.
That's like a real pang, because I love how she's talking and she's like, I wouldn't want him to come to me because I know you would catch him if he did, and she's just basically saying like she loved him and stuff, and Sam Elliott is on the other end of the line, probably all the other way on the other side of the world, probably. And he has that line where, and he delivers it so perfectly, where he's like, I'm so sorry. Like he just, like, this is a 4-star general, like, who, probably those are people that don't admit they did wrong ever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I would just go out on a limb and say,
prove you correct on that.
yeah, exactly. They probably don't. But it's this personal moment between him and his daughter, where he's like, I realize that I took it too far. This is all my fault, and I've lost you now. Like, you're gone. And when he's like, I'm so sorry, and she just says like, I know you are. Like, it doesn't
mean the relationship is fixed. It doesn't mean it's ever going to be fixed. It's the acknowledgement that, you hurt me. I'm glad you realized that. It does not mean we're seeing each other for Christmas. So
because she tells him earlier in the movie, she's like, I want you to help him. She's like, that's why I told you where he was. It's like, again, Bruce is an experiment the entire movie, and that's what I love, is that at the finale, where people might get mad at this because it's like might be anticlimactic, but I love that David Banner dies by absorbing all the energy of the Hulk, trying to encompass it, and it's too much for him to handle. And what I love, but like the Hulk gets frozen, and then the camera goes down through the frozen lake as his memories are playing in the water.
I just wanted to say my favorite part of the whole movie is also not a Hulk part. It is the part where after they have fought and everything, and the big, frozen fucking mushroom cloud is there, and it's just that moment where David is gone, and it's just what happens, what plays in Bruce's head is like the one moment of warmth he ever experienced with this dad.
Oh, yes.
He just, kisses him on the forehead or whatever, and then he's
like, sweet dream.
Sweet dreams, yeah exactly. Yeah. That is a punch to the fucking face if I've ever seen one. Where you're just like, fuck.
Well, because again, Bruce is an experiment the entire movie. I love how he's like frozen in there, the Hulk, and like all of the memories are playing, and you hear like them playing, but then like the face of baby Bruce is projected over the Hulk, but you hear David Banner, like he has that line where he's like, sleep now, Bruce, and forget forever. Struggle no more, and give me all of it. And it's just like, people might think that that's goofy. It is fucking not. It is not goofy at all. I love that. Like literally, he is... But when he says like sleep now and forget forever, that is literally what he's doing with the monkey in the beginning when he's gassing it, and he's just sort of petting its head as it's being tested. Like it's just, oh my God, I just love this movie so fucking much. We're just gonna do like a commentary track.
I mean, Marty just laid it out, and I mean, we've alluded to it so far. But like, what really makes this film, I think, special and stand out, in contrast to not just contemporaries now, but its own contemporaries at the time, was the genuine pathos. You know what I mean? Like, this is a film like the foundationally at the bedrock. It's about daddy issues, right? It's a film for fathers and their children, and the relationship that develops and how it progresses and ultimately ends for both Bruce and David, and also General Ross and Betty. I think it's just a beautiful and almost bittersweet contrast, but it's pathos. It's a delivery of those two outcomes and emotions, like, nonetheless. And like Andy said, having General Ross just realize that he fucked up and that he can't get his daughter back, and that this is an almost irreparable relationship. That's real shit. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Like what I appreciate about that is like it wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't like they reconciled things. It was how most people that have a fucked up relationship with their father do. Especially from what I understand from people that I know with women and their fathers, of just like, hey, look, you really hurt me. I'm keeping you in my life to some extent, but we will never be able to cross that bridge. We will never get back to that point, especially like Andy said, being the type of specifically like military dad, that he is. Like, that's not a man that can, let alone say like, I'm sorry. Like, that was already a Herculean effort for him, but specifically like him kind of realizing like, fuck, I know I can never get that back. And then we have the opposite with David and Bruce, where their culmination ended in like his death, and I just really appreciate all the fucking Freudian like pathology that's going on in like the entirety of the film. Like, thankfully it doesn't steer too much in the like the Oedipus or Electra direction, but I appreciate the like underlying just kind of like very primordial and very like formative like way that like these people's childhoods and their dads fucking up their childhood really runs their whole life.
Yes, and that's why you turn into a big atomic bomb baby that can break tanks apart and blow up buildings. Like,
I love, because like, my dad was the one that would take me to see all these movies when I was a kid. We would go see all the superhero movies, and this year was when we saw Daredevil and Hulk. And both films, I think, father figures, of course, play a pretty big role in both. And it's so interesting to see, in this one where it's, if you have a really shitty dad who just fucking, you despise, and then Daredevil's like, oh, your dad fucked up pretty bad, but he's atoning for it, basically. He's a much more likable person because of that, even though he was a scumbag for a moment and fucked up really bad. I find that, of course, like, that's really well done. And that's why we love Daredevil. There's a whole episode about that, by the way. You should go check it out in season 1. On this end, it is like, all of these dads are horrible. They fucked up dramatically, or they went in with the intention of like, I'm not really your dad. You're just an experiment. Give me my real boy. And then the other one's just like, I unfortunately had a daughter. You're not a son.
You should have been a boy.
You should have been a boy. Whatever. Sorry I fucked up your life and you're now 40 and single. Sorry.
She looks like Jennifer Connelly. She's going to be fine. But she can do better than Josh Lucas in this movie.
Yes.
But they have that great Nick Nolte monologue where he says, like, I didn't come here to see you. I came to see my real son. And he calls him, he's like, you're a flimsy shell, a husk of humanity that's going to be torn off at a moment's notice. Yes. And it's like, wow, everything that I am in my life means nothing to you. And it's just this thing that you can get out of me that is... that is why you care at all.
And when Bruce starts crying because he's thinking of his mother, and he's like, there, shut it. And he starts to approach him to touch him. He's like, don't touch me.
He's approaching him to touch him to try and absorb him.
Yep. He's pretending to comfort him to get his power. Is what he's been doing throughout the whole fucking movie, of course. But it is that final moment of just like, maybe there's some compassion in this person, and no, it's actually just another ruse for him to get closer.
And then they have that part where he turns into the absorbing man. They fly up into the clouds, and people, oh, it's goofy. Shut up. But I love the image of bursts of light, and you see the Hulk trying to grab him, but also like the Hulk is trying to grab him and can't, because what David Banner did to him is not something you can fight physically.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not something you can wrestle with physically.
Yep, and that is a huge part, and that's why people fucking bitched and moaned when this movie came out, was that Hulk and the Absorbing Man don't really physically duke it out in this movie. They have a tussle, he's just like, Hulk is trying to get at him as a lightning thing, he starts to fight him a little bit as a rock thing, and then David has this very uncomfortable, orgasmic, yes, and then he goes, fuck, he just throws him out into the ocean, basically. So I love that, it's not a physical fight, which takes away all the power of Hulk, and what you think of when you think of Hulk is like the physical strength. What happens when he fights an enemy that he can't physically defeat? You can't beat him in a physical fight. How do you overcome that? And it's making peace with the fact that your dad is a horrible person.
And you know what? Experience all the stuff that you did to me and see if you can take it. You know what I mean?
Take it all.
Yeah. It's so great. And then, of course,
the trauma you gave me. It's a movie about trauma.
Yes, and it's about trauma, and that's what's so powerful about it. But I have to name drop that monologue that he gives, where he's like, "Oh, I took everything that was dear to me and transformed it into a memory." That is some incredible acting on Nick Nolte's part. Oh, yeah. But if we were to talk about every line in this movie, we'd be here for much longer. So we should probably get into the reaction to it to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Which is I have the box office here. I put it on the outline. It's not great. It made $245 million on a $137 million budget, but this was 2003, so they were planning a sequel at least at the time.
At $2003, that's enough to say, hey, we broke even on this, and with DVD sales, we're going to make a healthy profit on this, so maybe we should do a sequel. Yeah. That's the thing.
If anybody's interested in it, look up Matt Damon on Hot Ones. I'm not kidding. Look up Matt Damon on Hot Ones talking about the change of the movie industry and how the lack of physical media sales is killing the legs or potential for a film like a cult classic to get a sequel. If Dredd had come out in 2002, there would have been a Dredd 2 in 2005.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yes. As in many things, streaming is cool for for the accessibility and the ease of access, but also what happens is that movies don't get the support that they used to get. There's it's a difference of hey, I watched this movie on Amazon Prime streaming. Okay, cool. They got 10 cents because you watched it, as opposed to rental revenue or people buying the fucking disc, which is $20, $25, and that used to be such a thriving industry. That's where a movie like Punisher, which did at the box office, made $50 million on home video.
Yeah, and they were planning a sequel to The Punisher as well.
Yes.
And that's the thing, is this was going to get a sequel in May of 2005, which, I mean, if they had brought everybody back, including Ang Lee, I would have loved to have seen that, because it would have had the Grey Hulk, Abomination, and the Leader. And I think bringing in the Grey Hulk and really starting to explore his personality, split personality, would have been an extremely interesting route to go down.
Yeah.
I think Universal just got scared by the reception. Dude, this is a period where critical reception was more valuably considered in how you make a movie. And if it's we made money on this movie, but the critical reception wasn't great and audiences shunned it, we're just not going to do a sequel then, even though we got money off of this. It's a different
Yes,
times.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's how you get them rebooting Spider-Man after Spider-Man 3 makes almost $1 billion in 2007.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that's how they
get Spider-Man movie at the time, and they're just that audience reception wasn't so good.
Yeah, I mean, this is an era where they were killing. This is an era where they were killing a Silver Surfer spinoff because X-Men Origins Wolverine didn't do well.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's a whole different.
Because Elektra didn't do well, and also because Ben Affleck was complaining. But whatever, you could have given him more money.
Yes, but anyway, just saying. All in all,
man will do anything for a paycheck. Come on now.
Yes. But having said that, I think this is the superior Hulk. That should be the next comic. That should be the next adjective. Superior Hulk. Yeah, no, I think this is the superior Hulk. I love Edward Norton, which we will get to. But I think out of all Hulk adaptations, not counting the Bill Bixby show because it's so far away, out of all the theatrical Hulk adaptations, this is by far the most accurate to what the character represents and the most accurate to what the character can be.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I love it, and I'm glad I got to share this experience with you boys.
It's an interesting thing where I have always loved this movie. I from day one when I saw it in theaters, I couldn't fathom why I enjoyed it so much. But as the years have gone on, as the decades have passed, as we are now 22 years removed from when this movie came out, which my back hurts thinking of that. It's something that every time I think about it, every time I go back on it, there's some new layer that I can appreciate, and just it's another case of just this specific period of time with comic book movies where they weren't just trying to do an action blockbuster, they weren't just trying to do a comic book movie, they were trying to make a movie first with a comic book in it. That is what this felt like. This is a movie first. This is why the actors take it so fucking seriously. Nobody is winking at the camera. No one is making a fucking stupid fucking joke about the big jolly green giant or whatever, This is, this is
they're not showing the Hulk's butt as a joke.
Right.
They're not joking. Like Taika Waititi does.
They're not joking about the Hulk fucking Black Widow because that's all they could fucking think of in fucking Age of Ultron. This is a different time, and the
Hulk's not dabbing in this.
Hulk isn't oh my god, why'd you remind me of this? Why do you hurt me in these ways, Andy?
We'll talk about this more in the Incredible Hulk episode for sure, but Hulk has got to be the Marvel character that has been treated the shittiest in the last 2 decades as far as media goes.
What are you talking about, Andy? Are you talking about the one where it's like all of his character development that has happened in the last couple of years has happened completely off screen to the point now he just has a son, and then also all of his villains are getting handed off into a Captain America movie? Come on, Andy. What are you talking about? Hulk has never been better.
Yeah.
But I will say, hey, I'm bummed that we never had Hulk 2. We should have. Universal, you done fucked up when you did that. Hey, I'm glad, Incredible Hulk also didn't do very well, and we'll get to that eventually. You deserved it for screwing over Hulk 2. Having said that, I am happy that Hulk, the video game, while not a sequel and is kind of just like a redo of the movie, has the leader in it and has a bunch of other cool little Hulk villains in it, and a lot of made-up ones too. And you can find it for $10 on PS2. It's fucking worth it.
I put this on Twitter yesterday. Let us all take a moment to appreciate the fact that we have a cel-shaded Hulk game in the world.
Cel shading. Mwah, beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And hey, you know what? And if I want more Hulk, there's Ultimate Destruction, which is even better.
Yes.
We will talk about that with the Incredible Hulk.
Yes.
We'll do that.
Ultimate Destruction, if people don't know, did actually play a big part in Incredible Hulk the movie. So...
Yes, and the Incredible Hulk video game adaptation too.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Oh, but yes, the Hulk game, pretty fun. Just you can watch some gameplay of it. It uses Ravage, which is a Hulk villain that has, I think, only ever appeared in issues 2 and 3 of the Rampaging Hulk, which is a 6-issue series from the late 90s, of which I own all of them and have read all of them. He's kind of cool.
Yeah,
he's kind of cool.
I like his design.
Yeah, he's kind of like a less. He's like an Abomination, but like less.
He's
everything.
We don't have the rights to Abomination, but we need another green monster in this.
exactly. So, but
they won't let us use Abomination because he's going to be in the sequel, right, guys?
Hulk video game is fun. The Bruce Banner levels are boring as shit. The behind the scenes making of that was on the fucking disc of the GameCube game was super interesting. That's Hulk 2003, everybody.
Yeah, Nick, do you have any closing thoughts on the movie?
I will say this is a certified heroic effort. One, because it convinced my cynical ass that, like, oh no, this is actually Kino. Two, it's, like I said, a foundational film that got this podcast started. And three, even though we've gone through all the merits of why you should give this film a second chance, and I do highly encourage everybody who's listening to go watch it again. I promise you'll appreciate it a lot more, especially if you keep in mind everything we brought up here on the show today. But what really gives it the seal of approval from No More Talking Productions as a certified heroic effort and certified banger is that it got a pimp-ass PS2 game. All right, that is the mark of any good heroic effort. If it has a good PS2 tie-in game, baby, that's a heroic championship right there. All right,
With Ghost
Yep.
Rider, man, absolutely.
played that shit on my cracked Vita the other day. Fucking bangs.
And I'll leave you all with this wonderful thought. Can you believe that Ang Lee was probably watching Requiem for a Dream, and during the ass-to-ass scene went like, there's Betty Ross right there.
Beautifully put. Smashing.
The real heroic effort is
Literally.
getting that image out of your mind.
She's like, well, she could take that big thing up her butt. That gives me some idea with the Hulk.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen,
The Hulk gets his balls bitten by a pit bull in this, effectively ending this hypothetical scenario.
No. Testicular
And-
damage Hulk. My favorite action figure.
Now with groaning action.
and for more incredible little bits like that, you can, of course, find us at No More Talking Productions on all of our social medias. You can follow Andy specifically at
@the_super guy on Twitter and Instagram.
and you can find Marty at
Only McFisherman on Twitter.
and you can find me at Nick Talamante and Monte Nix on X/Twitter and IG respectively. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to catch you next time on more Heroic Efforts. Till then, take care.